Hello Ben, thanks for having us round at your place to have a look at some of your fantastic collection of Evertonia.
It's a pleasure.
Before we get going though, maybe you can just sort of tell us a little bit about your blue credentials, how you came to be an Evertonian.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was an Everton supporter when I was young, quite young. Unfortunately, my dad died when I was 6 or 7, so I never really got the opportunity to go to a game until I was 11, and then I think somebody took me for my 11th birthday, because the date of the game was the 30th of November 1968, and we beat Leicester 7-1, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought, this is how it's going to be forever.
Every week.
Unfortunately, not quite worked out that way, but been many happy times. And then after that first game, my cousin Mike Keller, he used to take me, and we used to go to home away games. After that I started going to away games in about 72, 73, and then became a regular for homes and aways.
Nowadays you're at all the home games at St Luke's, where the Heritage Society has its matchday presence with your stall.
That's right, Rob, yes, and then it's a mad rush to get into the game just around kick-off. Sometimes just after kick-off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I say, we're here to talk about your amazing collection. How did it all start? What gave you the bug?
I guess like a lot of people my age, I used to collect programmes when I was younger. They ended up in a suitcase under the bed at my mum's when I moved out, and then she was murdering me to get rid of them, and I got the suitcase back out with the intention of getting rid of them, but as you do, you tend to start flicking through and you get captured again. And then the other aspect was I used to go to away games, and I tend to get a badge from most of the away games. I ended up starting to collect badges, and then I was in a local antique shop in Runcorn. I saw some football badges in the window. I went in to inquire about them, and the guy said to me, "Do you collect anything football?" I said, "Well, not really." I said, "It's mainly badges and programmes." I said, "Why, what is it?" He said, "Well, in the shop in Widnes we have an original photograph from the team that won the FA Cup in 1906. I said, "Well, that's certainly something that would interest me." And I think I bought that for £20. It'd be worth an awful lot more than that now. But that was the thing that kicked me off into collecting memorabilia rather than programmes. Yeah.
And that has continued to grow to this day.
Still has, yeah. That's over 30 years ago now. Yeah.
Okay. So
it's probably half of my lifetime spent putting a collection together. Yeah.
Spent well. So if we go back, I think your collection goes back about 140 years to the very earliest things, and we've got some things here on the table with us. Yeah. So I think when we were chatting before, we identified one of the very earliest pieces was this sort of membership card from the 1880s. Are you able to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's 1882-83. It's a very small card. I'll have to put my specs on to just talk you through that. One very pleasing thing about this item is that it was gifted to me by John Rowlands, who died not so long ago, who was a member of the Heritage Society too, and I was very honoured and flattered to receive it from John's wife. And at the time we were playing in Stanley Park. John Holding was our president, and there's the first team and second team fixtures on it, with the second team playing teams like St Benedict's, Halliwell, Golborne, Liverpool Ramblers, and the first team playing teams like Turton, Northwich, Wrexham, Eagly and Birkenhead. So very early days of the club, of course, and many years before the Football League started.
So this predates not only Goodison but Anfield and Priory Road. This is like our first home. Yep. That's amazing.
And it says Rules Lancashire Association.
Yeah, none of the Yorkshire nonsense.
No, none of this rugby lark.
That's fantastic. So moving slightly further forward, the next thing we're going to look at is this fantastic piece that appears to be a sort of diary from the 1891-1892 season. So we're into the league era now, as we'll come to. A lot going on off the pitch, but what can you tell us about this, Brent?
Yeah, so this is a diary, as you said, Rob, from the 1891-92 season. Grand price of 1 penny, and it advertises different things, as you would imagine, that would probably go towards funding it. So there's the Theatre Royal in Brett Road, and then there's the fixture list for the season, and inside then there's a page for each game where the owner would make notes. And the first game was on September the 1st, Everton v Bootle. Everton were 3-0 up at half time and went on to win 7-0, and the owner has reported that it was blowing half a gale and raining, and Everton played a fine game. Dunning played well in goal for Bootle. And moving through, there's little reports on each of the game, and there's one there for a game at Sunderland. Geary badly hurt, twisted ankle.
I'd love to know whose this was and who'd been writing these reports.
Yeah. It's amazing to think back in it that we're 130 years ago, and you're holding somebody's
handwriting. Actual handwriting. Yeah,
it's fantastic. Yeah.
So, as I alluded to, as this season was going on, there was rumblings, shall we say, off the pitch, and a lot of them concerned John Holding, who was president of the club, really the benefactor of the club.
Yeah.
Fascinating character, Holding. As well as his interest in Everton, he was a local businessman in the brewing trade. And something you've got in your collection here, which a real curio, I love it, is this sort of bottle, John Holding, registered trademark, Everton Beacon, Liverpool. And I love that reference to the Everton Beacon, because that ties in with something from a few years later. This fantastic sort of offer to two of the three Barmer brothers to come and play for Everton effectively. And I love that it references the this Everton Beacon that's also on the bottle here. So that real link to where the Everton village, and obviously that link to Holding. And that's now roughly where St George's Church still exists in Everton village. So long time before we had the lock-up tower, this was the reference and that commonality with the Holdings bottle. And of course on the other side of the letterhead is the City of Liverpool crest with the liver bird on. Absolutely. And that talking of liver birds, you have another piece just over there, Bren, if you just want to show me that and maybe just tell me about how that links in. But I think it's a beautiful ornate letterhead. And handwriting. And I love the way they've crossed out the address and written in hand. Goodison Park, July 1896. Fantastic. And of course Billy Barmer, one of the two brothers referenced here, became the first locally born Everton England international and a real stalwart defender. So this medal now is from the Everton FC Charity Sports in 1896. It's a silver medal. It's not inscribed, so it doesn't exactly say what it's for. But obviously, one of the athletics competitions, and again, interestingly, that's Everton medal from 1896 has a red liver bird on it. Not only liver bird, but a red liver bird. And within this links to some sort of charity sports day. We have something here on the desk from probably the previous decade, but it seems to be that there were these sort of what this title here, a Grand Athletic Festival. So we're sort of second guessing that it's some way linked to this kind of thing. This program from 1881 and 1882 of, as you say, Rob, the Grand Athletic Festival in Stanley Park, and a lot of Everton familiar names on there: Dunlop, Bainbridge, Dr. Whitford, Thomas Keats, Molyneux. So I think it's probably fair to assume that the medal and the function from 1896 probably carried on from the events in Stanley Park in 1882. Fantastic. So the liver bird was certainly not something exclusive to Liverpool Football Club at this point. No. And on the over here, Bren, from I think around the same era, we've got I think 1893. We have a share certificate. What's the story here? It's an interesting story, this one, Rob, because this was one of two share certificates I picked up at the same time. Somebody tipped me off that there was an article in the Echo. It's been about 6-7 years ago now, maybe. And a lady had gone to a car boot sale and seen a photograph
frame that she liked, or picture frame that she liked. She bought the frame for £5, took it home, took out the photograph or picture that was in the frame, and between the picture and the backing was the 2 Everton shirt certificates and 4 letters. And the letters were very similar in nature, the wording, the language used, but all from different addresses within a 2 or 3 month period, and all claiming to have lost the shirt certificates and asking to be presented with a new one. So it feels as though that, maybe that time there was some
kind of
scam going on. Yes, but again, interesting that the shirt certificate is in red print.
Yes,
from 1893, of course, only a year after Liverpool were founded.
But of course, Everton themselves have been worrying. They're just only
indeed.
Maybe a year earlier. So
yeah.
again, it didn't maybe have the same connotations that it has now.
No.
Right, Bren. Staying in the 1890s, I love this piece, and I know there's a story behind it. Runners-up medal for the FA Cup final in 1897 to a certain Bob Menham. So unfortunately, we lost the final. I don't think Bob had his finest hour in that particular game. Afterwards, I think he went down to play for Swindon.
That's right.
But how you came about it is quite a story.
Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting story. Yeah, and you've cut off me punchline really with the Swindon link. But anyway, I had a phone call from somebody who said they'd heard that there was a medal up for sale in Swindon. And it was purportedly belonging to Bob Menham from the 1897 Cup final. And the story was that it'd been found in a garden or an allotment, which all seemed a little bit far-fetched. Anyway, I did a little bit of research, and Bob Menham, I think he only played about 20 games for Everton, then moved to Swindon Town, and it all fitted together then. So I rang the guy, and he'd been into the local jewellers, and I've been offered £180 for it for gold value, and I said, well, I think I can do a bit better than £180. So I travelled down to Swindon and picked up the medal, and it's a really nice medal. Unfortunately, the top has been cut off, but nevertheless, a really nice medal, and inscribed with his name and the details on the back. Yeah. So.
And was it in good condition, or is that to be restored?
No, it's as you see it as I bought it. It's only 2 or 3 years ago, but yeah, it's in very good condition considering it's probably been in the garden for 100 years maybe. Yeah, so
fantastic,
nice piece,
and quite a goalkeeping dynasty, the Menhams, because Bob's nephew also played for Everton in the 1920s as an amateur, one of those amateurs. And famously, you'd see him photographed wearing spectacles.
That's right.
I think he took them off for the games, if you had any sense. Moving forward, just a year or two later, another great item, and I tend to think of the past being in black and white, but this is amazing because it's the use of colour in this document, produced by Boots the Chemist, pretty much the same logo as we have now. And what's the story with this?
Well, this is a very recent acquisition, Rob. Again, you build up contacts when you've been collecting for so long, and somebody rang me, said, a friend of a friend has got some stuff that you might be interested in. And often you get that kind of story, and no disrespect to people, it often isn't really of interest. People, I think that programmes that are 40 years old are going to be worth a lot of money, and they're really very common, and the supply outweighs the demand. But for something like this again, 1888-89 season, covers the Everton and Liverpool with a history of each club, and team photographs inside. Not in the best of condition, but nevertheless a really rare item. I think I only know of one other existing with a Liverpool supporter, and it's actually been signed on the front by E.A. Bainbridge, who was the director and chairman at the time we won the 1906 FA Cup final. So there are a few other items in that small collection, really nice items.
Yeah, Bainbridge was a long-serving director from the very early days of the club. Yes,
and one of his relatives still comes into St Luke's from time to time.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's fantastic. Yeah. You mentioned 1906, our first FA Cup win after a couple of very near misses. I and here I would imagine one of the jewels in the crown of your collection is this winner's medal, I believe for Harold Hardman.
Yep, that's right, Rob. Yep. Yeah, it's one of my favourite items. It's a beautifully designed medal. It's in a lovely leather box with Everton Football Club 1905-06 in gold on the front. It's actually the medal that was presented by the club. So there were two medals. There was the official medal presented by the FA. Everton, being Everton and a really generous club, decided to present each of the players with another medal from the club in recognition of their achievement, and it's a beautiful medal all round. So yeah, one of my favourites in the collection. Yeah.
And Hardman, an interesting character, an amateur player.
Yes.
He was in legal practice.
Yeah.
Playing on the left wing for Everton was just a pastime, a hobby for him.
Yeah.
But then famously became chairman of Manchester United.
That's right. Yeah.
At the time of he was there at the time of the Munich air disaster and the rebuilding. So a great life in football.
Indeed, yeah.
Here on the to your right hand side is a fascinating piece. Maybe hard to exactly date it, but it's clearly some kind of Everton monogram belt.
Yes, it's a belt. Again, it's another one I bought probably about 10-15 years ago maybe. It's seen better days, but nevertheless it's in pretty good condition, and as you say, EFC on the buckle. Can't have been particularly comfortable at all to wear. There's a similar one in the Everton collection, and I think that one may be attributed to Dixie Dean, but my view would be that it's from an earlier period, probably 1800s I would guess, and I think that's been backed up by the fact that we've located another one recently that was attributed to the player from the 1800s. Yeah.
And
so,
are we saying that people actually played in those, or was it more of a ceremonial kind of belt?
I'm not certain, Rob. I've seen players. There's certainly photographs of players wearing belts, but this one would be particularly uncomfortable. You would think must be the buckle must be 3 inches high by about 5 inches wide. You really can't imagine playing football in that, but I can't see what other purpose it would have been for.
Absolutely, it's almost more like a boxing belt, isn't
yes.
it? That sort of weight. Yeah. Okay, probably from a similar era. It's again hard to date precisely. We've got this wonderful, toffee shop money box. I'd probably best describe it as. Looking on the side, it's references Everton toffee, Molly Bushell, famously the sort of the first originator of what we now know as Everton toffee. Yeah. Noblet's the company that produced it at that time, and I think we've got the image here, haven't we, of Mother Noblet, which is now sort of been adapted over the years into what we now have as a sort of toffee lady motif that the club still uses. Yeah. Is there anything you know about this, or have you got any further information?
Very little I know, Rob, to be honest, other than, again, I picked it up maybe 15-20 years ago. I think it was a rare eBay purchase. It's difficult to find items of such quality on eBay these days, but clearly the chimney was where the coin went in, and then there's a little door at the end which the key is missing, but there's no cash in it anyway. So, but no, it's a really lovely item, one of my favourites, just for novelty value, really, more than anything.
You talked about eBay there, and you mentioned how you've come about some of your other purchases. Is it a real range of methods that you use to add to your collection? Yes,
I think one of the best methods now is I've built up. I'd like to think I've built up a reputation over that 30 odd years I've been collecting as a fair person. So I think once people realise that you'll pay a reasonable price for things, then they will pass on your details. So yeah, that is one of the best methods. Is a personal recommendation, of course. Auction is another source of some of the better end stuff, and eBay you will find the odd good item, but it's rather painstaking plying through a lot of modern stuff to find any gems, but they are still out there, and you've just got to keep checking all the time.
Are you finding it's becoming an increasingly international pastime?
Yeah, it certainly is. There's a lot of interest from the Middle East and America now. There's a big American influence on the trade in cigarette cards. So there's big collectors over there, and there's a cigarette card sold recently from Arthur Wharton, one of the first black players, for £20,000. So there's a real interest now coming from the States and the Far East in particular.
Okay. Also here on the table we've got from 1929 the sort of the menu for the Golden Jubilee dinner. Obviously Everton marked its Golden Jubilee in 1928, but the sort of dinner came the following year, and it is a fantastic piece. I'm lucky enough to have one in my family collection because of my great granddad as well, but it's wonderful because this is signed by the great and the good of Everton, and not just from that year, but we're going back to the early years of the club, I presume. Yeah,
definitely. So this was signed. Obviously, the dinner. The club again very graciously chose to invite some of the players from the very early days. I can see Jack Taylor, but there are older players than that.
People like Fred Geary there, didn't you?
There are players on it from that were in the first league game. So a really nice piece, and one that one was acquired at auction in Birkenhead, I think.
What was on the menu?
On the menu, goodness me.
Turtle soup?
There's every chance, isn't there? Oh dear. Soup clear kidney. Dear. Fish fried sole and shrimp sauce. Entree sweetbread supreme. I think most people will know what sweetbread was. And then there was roast beef and horseradish sauce, or roast chicken with sausage and bread sauce. The sweet was per Melba, and there was cheese and biscuits, coffee, and cigars and cigarettes to follow.
Naturally, and many toasts to various people as well.
No doubt, yes.
But that must have been one of the great occasions. If I could turn back time and go somewhere, that would be one of the events, just to be in the presence of the great and the good of the club for its first 50 years.
And there is a famous photograph from the balcony at the Phil of the dinner taking place.
One interesting thing is the cover, the logo there. And before we were looking at the club letter to the Barmer brothers, offering them some employment, and that featured the sort of the beacon on top of it, the fire beacon. Everton didn't continue using that as an emblem. In fact, for the next 50 years, if anything, they just used a sort of a simple EFC.
If anything, most of the shirts had no badges on at all. There were a few years in that period that they did have a badge on, but it was just a couple of different variations on EFC.
And so what makes this next thing very significant, I feel, is it's, we believe, unless you tell me otherwise, Brandon, the first use of the lock-up tower motif created by Theo Kelly sometime early in 1938. First really adopted by the club at the start of the 38-39 season, but this was probably issued in the spring of that year, so as we say, it may be the first official use of the lock-up tower that is still the emblem of the club.
So this medal is from 37-38. It's very small engraving on it, but I think the previous belief was that the tie that the club produced was the first use of the crest, but there's every chance that this medal, which was for the winners of the Liverpool County Combination, could well have been the first use of that crest that we're familiar with today.
It's certainly endured. So Brendan, in terms of clothing, we've looked at that belt before, but we've got an even better item, or two items now. Actual genuine Everton shirt from maybe the late 20s, early 30s. Who does it belong to?
Well, it came from the family of Jimmy Dunn, Rob. So I was contacted by a member of the family. It's lovely dealing with people sometimes, because often people don't have a true idea of the value of items. So I think I alluded earlier that people sometimes think that programmes from 40 years ago are worth a fortune and they're worth virtually nothing. At the other end of the scale, you have people who have something that they think isn't worth a lot of money, but to me it's you can't put a value on it. And this is one of those items really, because for a shirt to come up that's 100 years old, more or less 100 years old, is very, very rare. Sometimes people used to keep hold of their international shirts, but it would be quite rare for them to keep hold of a club shirt, especially with no crest on it. Exactly. So there was nothing really that would differentiate this from any other blue shirt, other than the fact that the provenance from the family, the Dunn family, is second to none. So as I say, there's no badge on it. Everton didn't wear the badge we mentioned earlier. There were 2 or 3 seasons maybe in a 50-year period where they wore a badge, but generally speaking they didn't. And of course it was before numbers, so there's no number on the back of the shirt. But it's got the lace-up collar that people will be familiar with, and has been replicated in the past. But yeah, just a beautiful item, slightly faded in parts, but generally for an item that's an item of clothing that's nearly 100 years old,
it's remarkable.
It's very rare to pick one up that hasn't been moth-eaten.
Absolutely. So Jimmy Dunn, as we've mentioned there, Jimmy was one of the Wembley Wizards, one of the Scottish players who beat England at Wembley in 1928. And on the back of that, he came down from Hibs to play for Everton, and of course won the FA Cup, scored in the FA Cup final in 33.
To a great burst of cheering, the two teams file out, with their shirts numbered for the first time in the Cup final. Everton white, 1-11, Manchester dark, 12-22. After half-time, Everton, with their goal lead, continue to press. Geldard, Everton's speedy right-winger, is another hero of the conflict, giving Langford a lot of trouble with his accurate shots, centres and corner kicks. From one of the latter, Jimmy Dunn gets Everton's third goal, and a little right inside from Glasgow puts the issue finally beyond doubt. The cup is Everton's, but there is some delay in claiming it. However, Dean marshals his teammates at last, and there takes place the happy presentation by the Duchess. Head of the Second Division 1931, First League champions 1932, Cup winners 1933. What a record! Well played, Everton.
But on the international front, we've got one of his caps here, maybe the first cap he was
I think
awarded.
it's his first cap, Rob, so it's a Scotland cap. It's embroidered 1925 on the front. This one has seen better days. It's probably in less good a condition than the shirt. Probably been displayed over the years. You can see areas where maybe the tassel has been over it, and it's not faded as much as the rest of the cap, but it has the typical rampant lion on, and is embroidered SVW and SVI for Scotland v Wales and Scotland v Ireland. So yeah, they were the first 2 games that Jimmy played for Scotland, and say not in the best of condition, but still really a nice item. Yeah.
And the shirt, as you said, must be a real rarity, because it's not like now where a player probably gets about 10 shirts issued a season, maybe more, and they can give them away to fans after each game. In those days, I suspect you got one shirt, and more often than not, I think those shirts then got handed down to the reserves, the A team, and gradually got tattier and stayed in the club. So for Jimmy to have somehow kept hold of this, and it to stay in the family and now be with you is a fantastic story.
Absolutely right, Rob. Yeah. As you say, players get so many shirts these days, and of course Jimmy Martin was employed to specifically look after the shirts, and Jimmy would go mad if he'd have known that his namesake Jimmy Dunn had pinched the shirt. But yeah, in those days, as you say, they were handed down, and even as recently as the 70s, maybe the first team shirts would be handed down to the reserves and then to the youth team.
More and more holes in them.
Yeah.
So this one we would date, as I say, late 20s, early 30s. Yeah. Have you got quite a big collection, and does it have many shirts from the sort of pre-war era?
No, I think the only other shirt I've got from the pre-war era is a Football League international game, which was Charlie G's shirt. But as I say, it's so rare for shirts to come up pre-war. Certainly club shirts. That people, as I mentioned earlier, would keep the international shirts because they'd have the badge on. They'd often have the match details on. Even in the 30s, sometimes they'd have the match details on. So people would keep them as an honour. But no, very rare to pick up anything this old. So the bulk of my shirts are from the 70s to date, really.
You mentioned Charlie G there. Charlie was a centre half, a teammate of Jimmy. They won the league title together in 1932. I think in your collection you got one of Charlie's caps.
Yes, I've got a lovely cap of two caps of Charlie's actually, but one in particular, a lovely cap against Spain, the famous game at Highbury, I think, when England won 7-1. I think there were 3 Everton players in the team that day, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, famous international when Zamora was in goal for Spain. But it's in the colours of Spain, so it's a sort of red and gold, beautiful cap.
So this is what went on in that era. The cap would reflect the opposition almost.
Yes, yeah. So for example, the home internationals, Ireland would be, if England played Ireland, it'd be a white cap. If England played Scotland, it'd be a purple cap. If they played Wales, it'd be a red cap. And then if it was an overseas team, then it would tend to reflect the colours of the flag or some significant colours to that country. Yeah.
And have you got a good number in your collection of these international caps?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
So, Bren, I've got a wonderful picture here from dated 1909. A significant event in the history of the club, really. The most ambitious journey that had been undertaken to date. The team headed for South America with, as well as Spurs did, I believe.
Yes, right.
And this photo was clearly taken on that tour.
Yep, Everton went off on a boat. Goodness knows how long it would have taken to get to Buenos Aires on a boat in those days, but it had been quite a while. And this came from the same source as the little booklet that we looked at earlier. So I think again it's come from the Bainbridge collection. It's in pretty good condition when you think it's come all the way back from Buenos Aires in somebody's trunk or suitcase. And it's the team's Everton, of course, and a team called Alumni from Buenos Aires. And interestingly, the team from Buenos Aires all have English names. They're all suited and booted with a ball at the front. So yeah, it looks like it was a team of expats and the alumni, maybe some fairly clever people on there. But yeah, again, just a lovely piece. Quite unusual for a photograph to be taken wearing civvies.
Very formal civvies, right?
Very formal indeed, yes.
And as you say, obviously, a huge sort of British influence on football in South America in that time. And this particular tour inspired a number of clubs in South America to bear the Everton name, probably most famously the team in Chile, who I think you've been to watch yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately they weren't home the weekend I was there, so but we had a tour of the stadium. But yeah.
That's a wonderful piece. Moving on here, back onto the subject of sort of menus and orders of service, if you want to call them that. In fact, there is one in your collection, I think, from 1892. We talked about sort of John Holding and the split and Everton moving to Goodison Park a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
When Everton formally opened Goodison, there was I think a big event at the Adelphi.
That's right, Rob. Yeah.
I think you've got something related to that.
Yeah, I've got the menu card from that dinner as well. Yeah, which was I think the guest of honour was Lord Kinnaird, who's fairly famous in the early football circles. But yeah, the menu card is from an FA Cup game against Liverpool in January 1932, and it's signed by both teams and a lot of sort of local celebrities and politicians, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. Obviously, I recognise a few Everton names like Ted Critchley, Bill Bocking in there, E. Sagar, so Ted Sagar, Jock Thompson, but also journalists. So I think we can see Don Kendall, who wrote as Pilot, Ernest Edwards, who wrote as B. So
Bert Wright,
the cartoonist.
Yeah,
absolutely. So this was the third round of the English Cup, so the FA Cup. I'm not sure what date it was played, but clearly there's a festive feel to the food because they're having roast turkey and plum pudding and mince pies, unless they had leftovers from Christmas.
It was in January. Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic because one, you've got all these signatures, and two, just a very unusual design, isn't it? Actually, for this era to sort of be printed in the shape and form of football. Yeah. Again, just a very unique sort of piece of memorabilia.
It is, yeah. And no doubt will be quite sought after by Liverpool collectors too.
Make sure it stays on the right side, Bren.
Definitely.
Okay. I'm going to fast forward a little bit into the Mersey Millionaires era next, and this is a First Division League Champions medal in a sort of lovely, sort of bespoke casing. What's the story with this?
Yeah, the story with this is part of the story at least is that when Everton won the league in 62-3, Alex Young of course was playing for us by then, and when Alex played at Hearts, Hearts were having quite a successful run, and Hearts put the medals onto this kind of arrangement in a slightly different shape, but Alex then suggested that Everton might do a similar thing, and of course they did, and they used the same arrangement for the 66 FA Cup win, the 68 runners-up, and the 70 Championship year. So yeah, people obviously listened to Alex's suggestion, and that's very nicely presented. It could do with a polish. It's a little bit tainted, but should come up reasonably well with a good polish.
So that's Gordon West. How often do these kind of things come up for sale?
Not particularly often, Rob, and normally when they do, they tend to go to auction. This was a private sale, but usually if players' collections come to the surface, then it tends to be via auction. But the amount of commission at auctions these days, most auctions now, the buyer's commission is pushing 30%, and the sellers can be 15 or 20% as well. So 50% of the value could be going in auction fees. So if you can negotiate a private deal, then it's all the better for both parties, really. Yeah.
So I looked at Bob Menham's medal from 1897, the Hardman 1906 FA Cup medal, this one from Westy from 63. Have you got any other particular favourites in your collection?
Probably the real favourite would be the Cup Winners' Cup winners' medal. When I was young, I used to dream of watching Everton in Europe, so it was a dream come true for me to go to places like Bratislava, the Bayern Munich semi-final, and then to Rotterdam for the final. So to live through that, sit there on the terraces at Rotterdam in tears when we won that game, and then to later be fortunate enough to acquire the medal was great for me. So yeah, that's one of my favourites in the collection.
And some of your best stories about watching Everton on the road, I think involved that particular campaign. So maybe not for this film, but maybe that could be a spin-off.
Quite possibly.